So I think one of the reasons why the Saddle Mountains or the Wahluke Slope area does Semillon so well is because the dramatic shift is even more apparent there.
So I mean, elevation difference. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to tag on to it.
Elevation's about 1,500 in the loop.
Yeah, the highest part is about 1,500.
Yeah.
So could it be that, Michael, we're thinking more along like sort of in the California coast, it would be true that you have your bigger diurnals in valleys. Mm-hmm. But your high desert or mid.
Yeah, exactly. Because our atmospherics, our overhead atmospherics are really similar from Walla Walla to the Wahluke Slope, but it's the microclimates of the rivers, or those sort of local environments that bring warmth or cool to our local sites, and some of the surrounding grasses or the lack of grasses up on the Wahluke Slope. So you have what we find, we harvest Chardonnay about 40 miles from our Semillon vineyard. And our Semillon vineyard goes through veraison almost 2 weeks ahead of our Chardonnay, 40 miles away. Okay, really pretty close. In sandy soils, both in similar soil types. But the Semillon's going through veraison almost 2 weeks ahead of the Chardonnay. And varietally, that's not necessarily always a true character. In the same vineyard, it wouldn't be 2 weeks apart. So it's much warmer over there, and we're getting developmental ripeness on the Semillon ahead of the Chardonnay in a time frame. So the Chardonnay is at 2,000 feet on the way east edge of the Wahluke Slope, just outside the Appalachian, but the Rocky Ridge. And we're getting a big diurnal shift at Connerly Vineyard, and really high acids, in fact, slightly higher acids in our Connerly Chardonnay than our Semillon, which is in a slightly warmer spot and harvesting within 5 days of one another.
Yeah, and
so
by the way, on the Wahluke,
elevation can actually have some really huge evaporations and cooling and hot heat
But
spikes.
this is also why we're not a one grape region, because we have hundreds of different microclimates within an appellation, and you have to really choose not just the grape variety, but the right clone. And there's lots of clone choices nowadays. The right clone, the right grape, and the right orientation, all kinds of things, the right density if you want to get into that. And that's why we do so many things so well. We're not going to be focused on Pinot Noir or Sauvignon Blanc like New Zealand. It's not going to happen here. We do lots well because we can, and we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that microclimate shifts here are pretty dramatic because, like, we're talking about Wahluke Slope. We're implying that Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc does well on the Wahluke Slope, but it just occurred to me as I think about where it's all the east side of the Wahluke Slope. The west side of the Wahluke Slope, the Mattawa area, is much higher pH. Almost, I would not grow white wine there.
These are dramatically different styles of wine than you see out of the great Semillon areas in Australia too, like the Hunter Valley.
Hunter Valley, yeah.
It couldn't be more different, and they're much more expressive right now at either 5 years of age or 2 years of age. Then you've got to get to 10 or 15 years of age to get this level of expressiveness out of Hunter Valley Semillon, like Mount Pleasant and Elizabeth from McWilliam.
Personally, our wine does develop, but I don't think it's a 10 or 15 year white wine. That's not what we're making here. We are making wine that will develop, we think, for 3 or 4 or maybe 5 years, and then in the right cellaring condition, hold it for another year or two. But that's as far as we're going to push that, and we have everything back to 1995, so we know.
Yeah.
And we open them and taste them.
Well, your wine's a little softer than your wine.
Well, one of the things, reason why we brought there, one of the reasons why we brought their wines is because they're different blending, and Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc, that balance back and forth between the Bordeaux white.
Yeah. We have two things. One, both the Buty and the L'Ecole are Semillon dominant wines, so that completely changes the wine. And I think at least if I was to kind of rank order, I know these guys really well. Yeah. And so, like for example, these guys, they have worked at Clipson for a long time. So I'm out in the field, just like Chris Upchurch. But one of my triggers for me to start really paying attention is when Chris picks, because I know that I need to be paying attention because he's picking leaner than I usually like. But if Chris has chosen to pick, I better be paying attention.
It's kind of funny. Whenever Chris says we're about to pick usually Sauvignon Blanc first, I said, has Marty called yet? And he said, well, I expect a call within the next 6 hours. And then every year, Marty's the first to call. Where are you picking and what is it? You know, it's really funny. But we are usually
we're
the
on a
first to
shot
pick.
clock here, so I'm going to
we
talk
do
a
have
little
good
bit about
acidity,
the surprise wine. We pulled no punches. 2005, lovely vintage in Washington State, and a lovely vintage overseas as well. Great warm vintage. We pulled out the
This is a great bottle of wine.
great bottle of wine,
I'm just thrilled.
highly rated. Anybody guess? Clément, 2005, 96 points, Wine Advocate. Our wine's $25. The DeLille is 34. This is 10 times the price. $200 a bottle. We pulled no punches. Great vintage wine. Love this wine. Really lovely wine. This is, from the back label, 50% Semillon, 40% Sauvignon, and 10% Muscadel. And you can see they make it in a lot of Chateau Barrel, as you can tell, like DeLille. Just a certain character choice in the wine style, but let you decide if it's worth 10 times the money. I think we're delivering
what a treat.
It's a great bottle. And I want to answer Michael's question. It has nothing to do with the growing region or the wine. My original founding business partner, Charles Lill, whose family name we used because he financed everything, built us our chateau in Woodinville, used to call the property, which is 10 acres, his warm and cozy paradise. He never lived there, but that was his gentleman's farm, and that's where our chateau is. Well, in French, warm and cozy is chaleureux, ending in an EUX. And I thought, oh God, it's French ancestry, French chateau, French style winemaking. I need to trademark a French word. And I was talking to a famous chef, Thierry Rauchereau at Rover's, about this, and I told him about the story in Chaleureux, and he said, oh, to ZZ, I can't do his accent well. He said, just knock off the EUX, and it's Chaleur. And I said, Chaleur, what does that mean? He said, well, it means warmth. And then Chris Upchurch said, hey, let's add the word estate, because of our 10-acre estate, it'll be called Chaleur Estate. I'm sure we can trademark it, and then we can honor Charles Lill and his warm and cozy paradise, and thus it became Chaleur Estate. What I didn't know, that Thierry didn't tell me, is that word used in context in some French sentences can mean something completely different. You said it meant hot. Well, when I was a college student, I used to go to Paris and go to all the nightclubs. If I had said to some young French girl, je suis en chaleur, it would have mean I'm in heat. So I didn't know all these other context words at the time. But at any rate, it's what we picked. We trademarked it, and it became Chaleur Estate to talk about Charles's warm and cozy paradise.
Well, and I wanted to pick these wines. Hopefully we've got a nice broad section here of the classic Bordeaux white in Washington State that exemplifies, you know, some real power, some beautiful richness, some evolution, both in the age of the wines and in the minds of the winemakers and our intentions and what we're trying to do. And again, bringing out the 2005 Chateau Clément, for anybody who didn't, if I didn't mention the vintage, it's 2005. Very good vintage. Barker and the other critics only raised the 06 over the 05 in terms of a point score, but this was one of the wines of the vintage, most of them said, and a lovely reference wine. The thing that I find about Washington Semillon is, like you said, some of these even the California wines are just, they're shockers. They age incredibly well. And it's not just that they age, but they're really beautiful as they age. At Buty, we're holding back about a half pallet of wine just for the point of having wines at festivals in the coming decade, so that we can show our wines at 10 years old and really knock people's socks off.
It's got to be the Semillon that's driving supporting the Sauv Blanc.
Without a question, and we use Sauv Blanc and Muscadel to broaden that pure, deep depth of Semillon.
He has Muscadel. And in Buty, there's how much Muscadel?
There's 5% in this vintage.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
We don't have any growers with Muscadel, nor have we planted it, so that's why we don't.
We use Muscadel because we don't have new wood.